European Union, where the framework for sustainable finance is being developed, setting the pace for the transition to sustainability and paving the way for the inclusion of small, medium enterprises. There are three key criteria that increasingly influence the value of a business. It's environmental actions, it's societal actions, it's societal attitude, and corporate governance. This is the triptych of ESG. Good performance on key ESG indicators can contribute to the creation of value for shareholders and the improvement of long-term corporate performance. Companies that excel on ESG issues that are critical to their operation have stronger business results, shareholder returns, and the future profitability. The current global energy crisis and the geopolitical instability have highlighted the lack of preparation of both government agencies and business in developing resilience to ESG risks. At the same time, the challenges experienced by the global community and market due to the COVID pandemic, the lack of access to undisclosed corporate sustainability commitment data or global environmental corporate scandals, such as the diesel scandal, make the adoption of an ethical and binding green compass urgent. Only from 2020 to date, there has been a small but significant increase of 20% in ESG-related investments, projected to increase to 50% by 2025. A fact this is considered to be welcome, but still insufficient, which is why we are here today to collaboratively look for the middle of Ariane to escape from the past and sustainable practices and to pursue a suffer of healthier, greener, social and economic future. Greece and Italy are making steady progress in integrating ESG criteria, and the number of companies following the ESG data reporting process is increasing, with large companies setting the pace and small, medium enterprises and family-owned companies following suit. The focus on net zero carbon emissions, the evolution of the European Green Deal, greenwashing, EU taxonomy, the disclosure of quality data and sustainability reports, and external assurance, the integration of circular economy practices, and the acquisition of skilled staff are the major issues that we predict will have a positive impact on business across most sectors. The Athens Greek-Italian Chamber of Commerce, following all new development and trying to be closer to its member and their needs, is organizing with ICAP Greek Today's webinar, in which we'll talk about the economic materiality of ESG risk. Most importantly, we will present the SYNESGY platform, a project developed by a global network of leading companies that are market leaders in their respective markets, to provide its company with its own assessment, including the entire supply chain, on their three pillars of sustainability: environmental, social, and governance. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Christodoulakis, for all.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Ioannis. It was a great speech. I would like again to remind you to please close your cameras and microphones. And now we are ready to move to the next session with Mr. Christodoulakis about economic materiality of ESG risk. Mr. Christodoulakis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eleni. Thank you. May I share my screen? So is my screen visible?
Yes, everything's
Thank
good.
you. So,
Thank you.
thank you for this nice event in cooperation with the Hellenic Italian Chamber of Commerce. It's a great opportunity to get closer and cooperate in a number of important issues, as Mr. Tsamiha said, about the future. So today I would like to spend a few minutes to talk about the economic materiality of ESG risk. So why it matters and how it affects actually the value of the assets and our decisions in hand. So we are in a global quest for sustainability, and the story started in 2005 with the Principles for Responsible Investment, a UN initiative that received a very cold introduction by the markets. And then it took several crises of environmental, economic, governance nature in order for us to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, in 2015, and since then start working in a more collaborative way across the globe in order to design coherent policies that would lead to sustainability. And sustainability is defined in a very clear way through the UN initiatives. The UN initiatives talk about risk, and risk in the context of sustainability concerns the likelihood of potential incidents of environmental, social, or governance nature that could cause financial or reputational losses. So this is very well defined because it gives the three pillars that we're talking about today, ES and G. So we want to understand what is the impact of such incidents and what are the extent of losses and what is the extent of benefits that one can have if he or she is in a position to reduce those risks and eventually enjoy a valuation advantage in the markets. So ESG risk, therefore, that we're interested in here is an elaboration on sustainability risk. Why? Because we need to make it measurable. So we are talking effectively about the likelihood of potential failure incidents against ESG code behavioral criteria. So ESG sustainability codes provide us with a number of behavioral guidelines, what to do, what not to do. Therefore, a failure to meet those behavioral criteria could be seen as a realization of ESG risk. And our question here is how we can measure it, how we can value it in order for us to make decisions that eventually would lead the company and the economy to sustainable paths. And in the effort to quantify this, there are lots of approaches around the globe. And here you see a couple of scatter diagrams of ESG ratings provided by major rating houses. And you will see that the scatter diagrams here provide a very vague picture of correlation between them. So one would expect a very strong correlation between them, but the strong correlation is not evident. In fact, what we observe here is a very weak, if any, of correlation. So still, the international arena has not defined in a unified way ESG risk, although UN has given very specific directions on what is considered to be risk. So here, therefore, when we are talking about quantification and prediction of ESG risk, and therefore pricing of ESG risk, we're talking about measurements that have not been conclusive so far. So we are at the beginning of the process. So we are in the process of understanding risk and understanding how we should incorporate this in our decision-making process. And everybody has an intuition on what should be the long-term possible returns out of that or the reduction of risk with respect to this. So we need first to define what this is, and then to be able to price risk. So if we want to understand the risk about value through the ESG lens, so the value creation or the loss creation of this, we need to think in terms of eventual effects on the value of the company. So we have identified several channels for this, 7 channels that are leading towards sustainability if someone applies ESG practices. First of all, we are expecting a risk reduction, also a cost reduction, regulatory gains in the sense of simplification of things or access to subsidies and government appeal grants, productivity gains, of course, because there are various optimization processes that are built into the ESG framework, better strategic asset allocation in the sense that the horizon of the decision making and the selection of investment projects becomes long term, so strategically allocates its assets towards new investments. Also benefits coming from sector stability and sovereign stability that the company actually absorbs benefits from its market around it and from its wider economy around it, provided that the whole system has coordinated towards this way. So we can identify, therefore, channels of value or channels of losses if we prove to be imprudent with respect to that. And of course, not all of them are effective in the short term. Most of them are effective in the long term. So value will not be realized immediately, and actually losses could possibly be realized faster than gains. But in the quest of stability, we need to cater for the long term. Having said that, there is an obvious short-term benefit out of that. It has to do with the reduction of cost. And in the following, I would like to focus on the cost of capital, actually, because it is the sustainable financing element of the sustainability agenda. So we are talking about benefits that could come through the financing processes of the corporations and possibly countries. And here we have some empirical evidence coming from the MSCI. The MSCI studied the effect of the adoption of ESG practices by a large number of companies, those included in the MSCI World Index and the MSCI Emerging Markets Index. So you will see that as the quality of the ESG gets high, that is these graphs on the horizontal axis to the right, we have a reduction of the cost of capital. So the blue graphs give the overall cost of capital, the green ones give the cost of equity, and the red ones the cost of debt. So you will see that the higher the ESG, the smaller the cost. And this is consistently so in both the world markets and the emerging markets. Of course, the emerging markets have an overall higher level of cost because of the additional risk they have, so that's something expected. But although the data used here are, I would say, premature in the sense that they concern the period from 2015 to 2019, so it is the first 5 years of the SDG framework, we will see that the markets are in a position to price the effect of ESG behavior and therefore incorporate benefits for the companies. So there are new terms, greenium, socium, govium, having to do essentially with the discount that the in the price that the investment community is able to offer in order to access companies with high ESG ratings. So ESG, therefore, could provide some premium reduction in order to get a cheaper financing to interested companies, which is a very, very important short-term motivation for the adoption of the framework. And if we want to see what is the effect across different continents, particularly the US, Europe, and Japan, you will see that the higher the ESG quality, again, the smaller the cost of capital, which is a consistent pattern that we observe. However, we can see that in the US, we see that high ESG quality is given even more reduction in the premia. So you will see, for example, here for the cost of equity, that for the US, it's about 7.55%. For the Europe, it is about 7.65. So it's a bit more expensive. So Europe behaves more or less like Japan, but in this respect, US appears to be more mature in the sense that the markets are deeper and they scrutinize risks in more detail. Hence, they are ready to remove extra premium if they identify ESG opportunities. But all this is a very good signal. It is a signal that in the short term, good ESG policies and performance can lead to benefits in financing. And this is extremely important because you require finance, proper finance, to become long-term stable, finance your transition process towards sustainability, and be able to introduce innovation for the long run. These benefits do not stop to the corporate world. This is a graph coming from a study from Hermes International and gives the CDS spread across different ranges of quality of ESG. Again, in the horizontal axis is the ESG quality. 1 is poor quality, 5 is high quality. So we see that the general trend for the ES and G overall for mature markets, which are the dark blue, that show a quite intensive reduction in the CDS spread, which is the insurance premium that one has to pay in order to, if you want to be covered in investment in sovereign debt. So we have a very clear advantage, which is priced in the mature economies, but it is not yet priced in the emerging markets. So that's why we see the light blue bars fluctuating around that. So the developed markets do lead with respect to this pricing, which is another side benefit contributing to the long-term value creation for the corporation, because better and more stable financing for the sovereign means more stable sectors and more stable macroeconomic environment that gives a second round effect of benefits for the corporate environment. And having said that, and having discussed about how we can value ESG risk and what is the initial evidence on the pricing of ESG risk, we should now think about who we are. In order for us to price risk, we need to have an indication of an instrument to price, an indication of the various factors that contribute to its uncertainty. That is a distribution that generates the shocks about that. And the third element we need is to identify what our preference is towards these risks. What is our risk perception, how we rank the risks, and what kind of premia we demand for us if we are to undertake such risks from the point of view of the investor, from the point of view of the creditor. And on the left-hand side, we will see the ranking of such alternative risks through a survey completed by the World Economic Forum in 2021, where you will see that there is a tendency of environmental risks to be in the top right of the chart, which are the green dots, to be very highly ranked in the sense that they are the people feel that they are both important and quite likely to happen. And others that are in the red and the red dots are about the center and bottom left of the chart, meaning that social aspects of the ESG framework risks are not so important so far or so likely so far, although we have witnessed many social crises over the last 20 years. And with the orange dots, you can see the geopolitical issues that again are in the center. This has evolved, and on the right side, there is a graph that gives the global risk effects as assessed by a similar group through the World Economic Forum surveys in 2022. And you will see that the thickness of the colors gives the immediate effect that is expected by the public. So the environmental has become even more urgent, and also the social has gained weight because the society understands that without the social factors, the economy cannot stabilize, even if the environmental factors can be managed. And you will see that with the blue colors, which are the economic dimensions of the problems, are with very thin lines connecting the problems, meaning that in the perception of the public, the economic problems now are following compared to the other two. So the protagonist is the environmental, the emerging protagonist is the social aspect, and the economic aspect that includes also governance is third and much thinner compared to the second, meaning that the focus nowadays is primarily on environmental and social issues. Of course, all these interact with each other, and we have just entered into a process of simultaneous causality, in the sense that the markets give signals, the market participants develop preferences towards stability, they price the risks, and there is a continuous feedback from one to the other that elevates the system into a more stable one. What is missing here? It is missing, what we are missing, a culture. So this is at the beginning of a process to build a culture on this. And this would require time in order for us to build, if you want, a culture of citizenship, economic citizenship that would allow for the proper pricing of risks in the context of an economy that is able to look through the full spectrum of dimensions of stability, not just the economic risks. So, and with this, I would like to conclude.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Christodoulakis, for such an insightful presentation and so valuable information. I'm sure now we are ready to move forward with Mr. Francesco Porcioli and talk about SYNESGY, the ESG global digital platform for supply chain assessment. So Francesco, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eleni. Let me first share my screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So first, let me thank you again for inviting us, the Atlantic Italian Chamber of Commerce and ICAP CRIF, for having us today and to give us the opportunity to present SYNESGY. Today, I would like to spend some minutes on presenting the digital platform that we have developed in CRIF. So let's start first with a brief introduction of the, let me say, more the sustainable transition framework and background. So there is no doubt that at the moment, all the institutional body at any level, global or European, are focusing on, working on defining ESG frameworks, regulations, guidelines, and legislations. If we start first with the global side, it's important, and also Mr. Christodoulakis already introduced this point, it's important to understand that, for example, United Nations over the last years has worked very heavily on this, for example, developing specific agenda with dedicated deadlines and specific targets in order to reach sustainable development, objectives. But then also, for example, one of the milestones into this journey is the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement in order to reach carbon zero emissions. And last but not least, it's also important when we consider more the corporate side, the fact that, for example, Global Report Initiative standard that are, one of the main international standards, international best practices, what concerns disclosure, are very much focusing on ESG aspects. But then if you look at more the European side, so considering what, for example, European Commission is doing at the moment, has done over the last years, not only from a financial side, but also from a corporate side, a lot of regulations and again, guidelines has been published. I don't want to stress too much this, but for example, just to give you some ideas, for what concerns more the market side, the CSRD is one of the pillars as of today, and then on February 2022, a new proposal, the so-called Directive for Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence, has been published. It's going to focus more on environmental and human rights issues, and so some companies in the market will be required to disclose information according to specific criteria. What we as CRIF, what we have been doing since 2017, 2018, we first joined specific European Horizon 2020 projects, so funded by European Commission. These projects were meant to focus specifically on the E side, so on the environmental one, but then we as CRIF, we have understood the fact that the sustainability is a key point now as of today. So in 2020, we launched our first digital repository system for the Italian market, the CRIF ESG. And in 2022, we launched SYNESGY, the new digital platform. I'm going to spend some time describing the key features of the platform in a couple of minutes. Just to stress that in accordance with our prior experience in European 2020 project, SYNESGY will be also a tool or a key part of a new journey, a new European project, transparent, that is aimed at gathering information from small, medium enterprises in the market and to define, let me say, best practices that can be, replicated at European level. So what is SYNESGY? SYNESGY is a global digital platform that supports both financial actors and corporates in the corporate market in gathering ESG information and data and supporting clients and suppliers in their sustainable transition. At a glance, as of today, we are in 4 continents. We cover more than 40 countries and we have different languages available in the system. Last but not least, we have also defined specific partnerships at local level, and these allow us to, let's say, localize the product in the sense that we complete a set of tasks that allow us to make SYNESGY the platform in line or aligned with existing market frameworks and market practices for what concerns sustainability and ESG on a whole. But let's move forward and consider now, let me say, the key point. And the key point is the fact that when companies are committed in improving their ESG data and the available information that they have for what concerns ESG, they can see remarkable business results. That's for sure. So these companies can experience, let me say, more resilient supply chains. They can reduce their costs, and of course, they can have the chance to create new business opportunities. So if from the corporate perspective, if we consider the fact that there is in the market a tool like SYNESGY that can support them first in gathering and managing ESG information, we wanted to first consider the so-called ESG impact. So such a tool can be the instrument that support the company in first assessing its own ESG performance, but then at the same time also to understand how that specific company is, positioning in the sector or in the industry it belongs to, for example. Last but not least, having such an instrument in place can support the company in identifying gaps, current gaps, and areas of improvement in order to define a specific strategy over time. While if we consider the point from a business side, of course, having such a tool in place and also being or having the chance to manage ESG information right now can lead to a reduce of costs and a reduce of risks, like those related to the supply chain. And SYNESGY very much relies on the concept of supply chain. We will see this in a couple of minutes, but also risk related to the operational side and also the reputational one. At the same time, from a business perspective, managing ESG information today can lead to an increase of process efficiencies. Also, to create innovation, create new opportunities or new partnerships, and then attracting more financing opportunities. This is a key point that should be considered overall. Last, I would like to stress that from a transformational perspective, after having taken into account all the previous aspects, of course, we have three main areas or pillars, let me say, we should focus on. First, managing ESG information allows to be compliant with existing regulation. I mentioned this at the beginning of this presentation. The regulation is just at the beginning. More and more regulation is going to come for what concerns ESG. Secondly, the reputation. So being able to manage in the proper way ESG information can lead also to have a better, let me say, management or engagement with companies, stakeholders, like suppliers, like customers, but also with internal stakeholders. And last but not least, the concept of profitability. So being able to, let me say, having ESG related supply chain improvement, they can lower the cost of procurement practices for many years to come. So, of course, data are key assets, ESG data are key assets of today. But what is the very key point here that we have to consider? Defining a proper strategy in order to address and to tackle the sustainable transition is only or can be only based on the fact that there is a need of granular information. So what is the key challenge that the market is experiencing at the moment? There are a lot of open source data, but the point is that we need to gather granular information, and this is exactly what SYNESGY is able to do. Let me clarify one aspect in terms of the fact that ESG data are critical as of today. As you can see here, we have considered or taken into account an analysis made by Forrester. It has been published on May 2022. And as you can see, a survey submitted to a very robust sample of companies. If we consider over time how the perception of companies, of respondent companies has changed over time again, it's impressive. Because as you can see here, 3 years ago, the answer labeled very important. So the question is, let me say, or how ESG information are important in your company? As you can see, today we have double the percentage of the answers very important. While, as you can see, we can experience dramatic drop in somewhat important answer. So the market is very much recognizing the fact that we need to move forward with solution in order to manage ESG information and ESG data. And how we do this, how SYNESGY does this? First, in the platform, we make use of a dedicated questionnaire. dedicated questionnaire is based on 5 macro sections. We first focus on the business side. So we have a set of questions dedicated for the existing, if any, strategy inside the company. We then move forward with the 3 pillars, E, environmental, S, social, and G, governance. And last, the industry, an industry-specific section. So when the company is registered on the platform, it also declares the kind of industry it belongs to, and accordingly, the platform provides a dedicated set of questions for that specific industry. Allow me to clarify and to stress the fact that the entire set of questions has been defined in accordance with existing ESG frameworks like UN Development Goals, as I said before, GRIs, and the EU Taxonomy. I would like to say that in overall, if we consider the ESG journey, we first identify 2 main actors. Let me say first, head of supply chain. When we consider the head of supply chain, we are referring to the company that is willing to assess the ESG compliance of its supply chain. And it is the one that can benefit of dedicated window and dashboard inside the platform. We will see this in a minute. And then we have the so-called suppliers, or companies that receive an invitation to join SYNESGY and to fill in the questionnaire and to provide key ESG information. And at the end of the process, they fill in the questionnaire, they receive a final certificate in addition to an ESG score. So in terms of the journey, just to recap a little bit how it works, the head of supply chain, the company, again, willing to receive the assessment of its supply chain, signs a contract with SYNESGY, an account is created on the platform. Automatically, it is possible to upload the list of companies or suppliers to be invited on the platform. The suppliers receive the invitation, they complete the questionnaire, they receive the score and the certificate. And both of them, the score and the certificate, are valid for 12 months. Why? Because after 12 months, the system and the platform automatically invite the company to refill in the questionnaire and to provide us with updated ESG information. Because one of the key aspects that we focus on is also to see how companies are progressing over time and how companies are improving in terms of ESG performance. As part of the process, of course, we have in place quality checks at 2 levels. First, we check for the reliability of provided answers by the company with a set of automatic checks. Automatic checks can be at different, let me say, level or different kind of implementation. They can be based on predefined rules that we have defined here. It can be based on logic checks. So in order to check for the so-called consistency among or between given answers, or they can be also checks based on local business information, so data sources. But then, of course, as part of the filling process, the company is also asked to attach and provide specific documentation. And that's why we have also a team of analysts in every country where SYNESGY is localized that can check for that specific documents. Again, the next 2 slides are aimed at providing you with more information about or details about how the solution, so the tool, can support both head of supply chain and suppliers. First, head of supply chain, they can benefit for the dedicated part of the platform in addition to the dedicated dashboard. And thanks to the dashboard, they can, every time they want it, they can benefit and they can see on how their supply chain and their portfolio is performing in terms of ESG score and in overall the ESG distribution. While the suppliers, again, they receive a score and they receive a certificate. One of the final remarks that I wanted to pass is the fact that SYNESGY is a very collaborative system. When a supplier fill in the questionnaire and provide all the needed information to the SYNESGY platform, there is no need to the very same suppliers that is also invited by another head of supply chain to refill in the questionnaire as soon as the other head of supply chain invite the very same suppliers to join the platform. But let me stress this point because it's very important. The score that is attached and computed for a specific supplier is not available for the entire SYNESGY platform, but only for those head of supply chains that join SYNESGY and has invited that specific supplier as part of their supply chain. Overall, at the moment, so currently we have engaged more than 250 supply chain or leaders or head of supply chain, as we said before, and overall 170,000 suppliers are now in the process. Some of them have already completed the questionnaire. They have already received the score and the certificate, while some others are still in the process of filling the questionnaire and completing it in order to close and finish the process. Okay, so I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I am at your complete disposal for any question. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Francesco. It was a great presentation. So now we are ready to move to our Q&A session. Let me just share. Everyone, if you have any questions, please leave it at the chat box, and our speakers can answer your question. So I will just wait a few minutes more. Then I totally understand that it was very insightful and there are no questions to cover here. But if you have any more certain questions for your specific concept or for your company, we are here to answer your questions through our email or our telephone. You can contact us or have a look at our website, icapcrypt.com, where you can find a lot of information there. So, one minute more. Great. Thanks a lot for joining us and for your interest about ESG. If you have any questions, you can contact us, and of course you can find more information again in icapcrypt.com. The webinar will be shared in our YouTube channel. I would like to thank personally Mr. Christodoulakis, Mr. Ioannis Tsamichas, and of course Francesco Porcioli for their great and so inspirational presentations and speeches. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.